Hi students, today I'm going to be talking about the introduction and a few different parts of the introduction and how to approach them. So to start, we should know that the introduction has three main parts. The hook is something to draw the reader in or to interest the reader. The background information tells important information that the reader should know in order to understand the rest of the essay. And the thesis statement is really the most important part. The thesis statement is our argument. Every essay has an argument. And an argument basically asks the question, what are you trying to prove in your paper, right? Remember, your goal in any essay is to prove to your reader that your argument is true. Your thesis statement tells the reader the argument. The body paragraphs prove that that argument is true. Okay, so now that we know the three basic parts of the introduction, let's look at each part individually and see some examples. So to start, the hook. The hook is the very first part of the introduction, and it answers the questions, how can you capture the reader's attention in this essay? And also, how can you go from the reader's life to your essay? What is the connection between the two? So capturing the reader's attention is kind of like this little thing that the worm is resting on. This is called a hook when you go fishing, right? And the fish is obviously very interested in the hook that is carrying the worm, right? So the hook does the same thing in an essay, right? It makes the reader really interested and helps the reader relate to what's to the topic of your essay. Now, how do we go from the reader's life to your essay? Well, my essay is all the way over here. My reader's life is over here. Think about the hook like a bridge connecting my reader to my essay, right? So we want to think about the connection. Let's look at an example of a topic and a couple of hooks that can do these two things. So my topic is how to prepare for a job interview. This is a process essay because it tells me how to, right? Again, if I'm thinking about going from my reader's life to my essay, and I'm also thinking about attracting my reader with something interesting that they will relate to, I might go with one of these hooks. So these are two options, right? I won't use both, but I'll just choose one. Number one says, out of hundreds of applications, only 5 or 6 candidates might be invited to interview. Whoa. And of those, only one candidate will actually get the job. So this is actually a fact that I looked up on the internet. And I thought it was a really good idea for a hook because it's something that I think everyone can relate to. Everyone kind of knows, yeah, if I put in my application for this job, I have a chance, but a very small chance of getting an interview. And if I do get an interview, it doesn't necessarily mean I'll get the job because only one person can get the job. So this is a fact that I've put in my own words, of course, not copying from the internet, but it's something that my reader can relate to, that I can go from my reader's life to my life. Here's the second one. Many people say the job interview is your opportunity to show your future employer your best side. However, that is easier said than done. And I wrote this one because I thought it was a statement, not a fact, right? But something I've observed, right, in my own experience. It's a statement that the reader can relate to. I think when the reader reads these two sentences of the hook, the reader is going to say, yeah, that's true, right? It is really important. It's a good opportunity, but it's kind of hard, right? It's really hard to do. So either one of these would be an effective hook. There are many ways to write a hook, right? But a fact or statistic or a statement the reader can relate to are two strategies for thinking about how to write your hook. Okay, the next section is the background information. And this is a large portion of the introduction. So where the hook is very, very small, maybe 1 or 2 sentences, background information could be 5, 6, 10 sentences, depending on how long your essay is, right? The background information answers the question, what does our reader need to know in order to understand this essay? What essential information does the reader need to know or need to be reminded of? So again, for our topic, how to prepare for a job interview, I thought of these two questions that the reader needs to be reminded of, right? The reader probably knows, but they need to be reminded of. Why are job interviews important, right? So by reminding the reader why job interviews are important, we're helping them get into the topic of our essay, right? If job interviews are so important, then it's also important to learn the process of how to prepare for a job interview, right? And the second thing that I want to include in my background information is why people find job interviews challenging. Because if I can convince my reader that preparing for a job interview can be challenging, then they will probably be a lot more interested in my thesis that tells them, here are some easy steps to follow to learn how to prepare for a job interview. See? So the background information is very strategic, right? And you're kind of holding your reader's hand and helping them get into or transition into your thesis. Okay, the last part and my most favorite part is the thesis statement. I like to think of the thesis statement like a road map. My reader should be able to read my thesis statement and know exactly where we are going in this essay, right? So that's a really good test. You can give your essay or give your outline to your friend or family member and say, tell me what you think this essay will be about? And if they can tell you, then your thesis statement is effective. If they have no idea, then you probably need to look back and revise your thesis statement. The thesis statement is usually the last sentence of an introduction or quite towards the end of the introduction at least. It answers the assignment question. So when your teacher gives you a question and says, write about this, your thesis statement should be the answer to that question. And it also outlines the points of the paper that will be discussed. It can do this in two ways. The first way is it could list the exact points, right? So it could tell the body paragraph number 1, 2, and 3 what each one will be about. Or it could stay more general, right? So the thesis statement could say, there are 3 main points, right? Or there are 3 key steps, or there are 3 reasons why, Jessica Pinedo is the best teacher in the world, for example, right? So this is kind of optional and up to you. To me, it kind of depends on the length of the essay. So if I have a super long essay, it might be good to tell the exact points to kind of orient the reader and tell them what to expect. But if I have a shorter essay, then I might keep it more general, so I'm not constantly repeating those steps. Okay, let's look at an example thesis statement for the assignment question, how to prepare for a job interview. My first thesis is very general. If you want to succeed in a job interview, there are a few key steps you need to take to prepare. Notice that the thesis statement tells the topic of the essay, right? Take a moment, pause the video, and see if you can find the topic of the essay. Okay, here's the answer. It's to succeed in a job interview. And then take a moment, again, pause the video, and see if you can find why I think this thesis statement is a general, not specific thesis statement. So if you said a few key steps, then you're right? By saying a few key steps, I'm not telling the reader what the steps are, right? That would be specific, but I'm just saying the number of steps. I could also say there are 3 key steps. This still helps orient my reader and give them a roadmap because the reader knows, oh, in this essay, she's going to discuss 3 steps of how to succeed in a job interview. Here's another thesis statement, and this one tells the exact points that will be discussed. So again, pause the video and see if you can find the topic, and then also what are the 3 points that will be discussed. Those will be my 3 body paragraphs. So again, please pause the video. Here is the answer. Again, preparing for a job interview. Preparing for a job interview is the topic. And step number 1 is research. So body paragraph 1 is going to be about researching the job. Point number 2 is anticipate questions. This is going to be body paragraph number 2, right? And point number 3 is practice. That's going to be body paragraph number 3. So again, you can see two different types of thesis. Both are okay, right? Either one is okay, but remember, just choose one of them, right? All right, so what does an actual introduction look like? Here is where I've put all of these things together: hook, background information, and also thesis statement. I'd like you to pause the video and read through the introduction. Notice how long and well developed it is. It's not just 3, 4, or 5 sentences, right? This is a hefty introduction. It's a really good one. I'd like you to pause the video and I'd like you to identify the hook, the background information, and also the thesis. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip. When I'm reading an introduction, I always start with the thesis. That's the easiest one for me to identify. And then I work backwards. Then I look for the background information and the hook, right? So I'd like you to do the same. On the next page, I'm going to give you the answers. And here are the answers. Okay, in blue at the top, we see the hook, right? In green, we see the background information. Notice in the background information, I answered those 2 questions that I showed you on the other slide. So first, I talked about why job interviews can be challenging. And I not only said job interviews can be challenging, but I showed you why. I explained why, right? In all of these sentences here, right? All of these things together can make the job interview challenging. And then after I talked about how they can be challenging, in the background information, I also talked about why job interviews are important, right? Like, why do we need to know this information, right? In yellow, I have the thesis, but notice that I have one more sentence here in black before the thesis statement. This black sentence is a transition to the thesis, and its job is to transition from the background information, which says that job interviews are challenging, but they're very important, to the thesis statement, which says, here's what you do to succeed or to prepare for a job interview, right? I just simply said, therefore, it is essential to know how to prepare for a job interview once you're given the opportunity. So by talking about why that it's very, very important, this serves kind of as a bridge or a connector between the thesis and the background information. Now, right now, if you're struggling with the introduction, what I'd like you to do is try to work on your hook, your background information, and your thesis. However, if you've got that down, if you feel very confident about that, try to go for the transition to the thesis. Try to add that in. That's going to make your writing a lot more smooth and easy to follow for your reader. Okay? So I hope that helps, students. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. But I hope this will give you an idea of just sort of a basic introduction and how to approach it, how to think about it. Okay?